It actually starts when I'm at Goldman Sachs. The Asian crisis happened in 97, 98. That was a crisis of debt, where all of these Asian economies had borrowed too much money and blew up. George Soros wrote a book about it called The Crisis of Global Capitalism. And he said, listen, this debt bubble is likely to transfer itself to the developed world. And he was right, and that there would be a crisis. That got me attuned to it, and I realized that the world was massively in debt, never been this far in debt. 2000 boom bust comes along. The debt crisis didn't blow up because they started cutting interest rates. Then we go to 2008, and we've transferred the bubble from equities now into property. And that brings down the world's financial system. And the central banks discover a new trick, which is we're going to print money. But also over 2008, we discovered some other things, like nobody knows who owns what in this very leveraged financial system. You know, somebody in Lehman Brothers, nobody knew who owned all of these bonds and stuff. So I realized there was a problem with ownership, there was a problem with leverage, and the system was still not fixed. And then the debt bubble blew further. And I knew that by the time we got to the European bubble, it was now affecting major developed governments, Spain, Italy, France. And I thought, we need to find a way out, because the governments are going to keep putting sticking plasters on it, printing money, debasing currency, and finding a way of not letting this deflate. And we know that the more you blow up a balloon, the more likely it is to implode. So I thought I need to do something about this. So I started researching building the world's safest bank, which is a slightly hubristic thing to do, but I thought I'd give it a go. And I went around the world trying to set up this bank, and it's hard. And I gave up. And a friend of mine tapped me on the shoulder and said, you looked at Bitcoin. This was 2012. He said, I think it's the answer you're looking for. So I looked at it, saw it very quickly. Blockchain allows people to store all of these assets and know who owns it. That solves most of the financial systems problem. It's also a better way, faster way of settling and everything else. And Bitcoin itself had this kind of limited supply that maybe it could be a store of value. So I wrote the first paper on it that was a macro paper saying, listen, if you compare it to gold, with gold at $1,300, Bitcoin should be worth about $1 million. And I published that, and kind of a lot of people went, wow, we've never seen a macro research piece, because at the time it was like a geeky tech thing. I then bought it myself back in 2013, and it went up 100% in a month, and I sold it. I'm like, financial markets don't do this. Options might occasionally, but something's weird about this. It's a bubble, or I don't understand it. So then I left it again, and then I rebought it, and then I held it all the way to 2017. It went from $200 to $2,000. I sold it. I thought it was a hero. It went to $20,000 3 months later. I felt like an idiot. But I was out, but I was very interested in the space, and then watched the whole development of the space grow. And I knew that the next recession, this force of debt and central banks and all of these open questions were going to get exposed all over again. So I became quite well known in March 2020, saying, okay, this is the time to go all in on crypto, because the only answer here is for the banks and governments to spend massive amounts of money, and it was likely to drive the value of crypto up, and people would understand the value of blockchain and what this could mean in terms of crypto assets. Got heavily involved then, and have had 100% of my net worth, of my liquid net worth, in this space ever since.